Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another Campfire Story starring yours truly, Doc X, aka Doc the Voice. We got Demand here, aka Chef Demand. And today we're going to be talking about a semi controversial subject. Maybe a lot of people, I'm going to start out asking a question to you specifically, Demand, but also those in
Oh,
chat, anyone who enjoys the creepy campfire stories that we do. What is a coincidence, and how far does it go until it becomes something else? Right. So my question to you, let me specifically like narrow it down. Right. Have you ever had something that was too creepy or too weird to be just a sheer coincidence? Right.
uh, besides meeting you, I can't recall.
Right, right. And I think a lot of people, that's the case. Like a lot of times it happens to you and you just sort of just brush it off because what else can you do?
Hmm.
Right? Like things like deja vu and other types of coincidences, dreams that, happen to you and then seemingly, occur in real life. Again, it's just something that people are just like, whoa, like that was weird. Like I had a dream that I saw this person. Even thinking about someone when you need them or need to talk to them and then appearing right in front of you, like randomly, right? Not in a supernatural way, but, coming around the corner where they weren't supposed to be or, in an area that, I know that happened to me a few different times. I can give one example before we get into this. Um, One time back in the day, for those of you who are uninitiated in the old school ways, we had landlines right before cell phones were, like took over, and the landlines. You would pick up the receiver, right, and you would hear like a dial tone, boo, and you knew you were ready to call somebody. You know what I mean? So you would punch the number in, and I remember on this one occasion, I needed to call my mom. I'd been thinking about it. I was a younger guy. I was a kid, and I was just my mom it was at work, and I needed to contact her for whatever reason. I can't remember what it was, right? And I picked up the receiver to dial the number, and I put it to my ear, no dial tone, and I was like, I almost hung it back up, right? Because sometimes, if your power goes out or the phone line disconnects, it just won't give you a dial tone. But instead, I was like, hello? And through the receiver, I heard my mother's voice. And she was like, hello? And I was like, I was just going to call you. And my mother was like, yeah, that's like, I was calling you because I want to talk to you. And I was like, okay, but I want to talk to you. I was like, what happened? And we were both like really, really confused. Turns out on her end, she had picked up the phone to call me, dialed the number, and it never rang. So on the other end, yeah, on a landline, you would dial the number, you would hold it to your ear, and yeah, it would. You would hear the
Hmm.
noise, right? We can put it in. We can maybe put it in post, and then the person would answer. There was never any rings. It just clicked, and it was silence because at the same time I had picked up the receiver to call her. And there was just this weird moment where we were both like, this is such a strange occurrence. Like, she needed to talk to me, I needed to talk to her at the exact same time. We picked up the phone to dial each other, and we're basically almost instantaneously connected, like through the phone. That's how down to the millisecond it was, right? If she had called me seconds earlier, the phone would have rang before I could pick up to call her, and vice versa. Like, right? If she had
Oh yeah.
waited, but somehow us being in two different places just sort of connected in that moment. And there's a term for this that sort of goes beyond coincidence. And this term is known as synchronicity. Now, the
Synchronicity.
concept, synchronicity demand. Now, the concept was introduced by analytical psychiatrist and philosopher Carl Jung. Um, and he described it as two or more unrelated events that seem meaningly connected, meaningfully connected, although they are not necessarily connected by cause and effect, right? It's not something that you can draw a straight line. Well, this happened because this happened. It's sort of, almost a meeting of the minds or providential, universal connection of some sort. And we're going to go over what this could possibly be as we move forward. But before we do that, I actually have a story that I think is better than my own personal anecdotal story. And for those of you who haven't seen this podcast and watched it before, it's the story of Hugh Williams. Are you ready for this, Demand?
Yeah. Who's Hugh Williams?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, my good friend. So, on December the 5th, 1664, a ship sank off the coast of Wales in the Mania Strait. Out of 82 crewmen, there was only one survivor, a man by the name of Hugh Williams. Then, on December the 5th, 1785, over 100 years later, on the same day, another ship sank in the same treacherous waters. Only one survivor yet again. That man's name was Hugh Williams. Then, in 1820, yet another ship succumbed to the same fate in the exact same location, Demand. 100 crewmen perished in this horrible tragedy, with the exception of one sole survivor. His name, Hugh Williams. Finally, on August the 19th, 1889, a fourth ship sank in the exact same spot. And I know what you're saying to yourself, Demand. There's not a chance. There's not a chance, right? But hold on. This time, there were two survivors of this horrible shipwreck. Both of their names, Hugh Williams. I think, and Carl Jung sort of explains this in an interview, there are coincidences that happen in everyone's sort of everyday lives that can just be explained by happenstance. But I think that there does come a point where you almost see, I don't want to call it a divine order, but some sort of strange connection in life that is almost too exceptional to just be given over by mathematical coincidence, right?
Right.
Right. So, I think you have some research and some studies you want to contribute to this, and I think this is the time to do it. Now, there's many different kinds of synchronicities, and I think we'll go over this as we go on, that people may or may not have experienced. And I'm interested in the comments section below if you would like to produce and give us your version of a synchronicity, some sort of strange coincidences. You could do that. We also are live on Twitch, 8 p.m. on Fridays, every Friday at 8 p.m. And obviously, it happens when it happens. Just be prepared for it. And so, you can comment your stories there, and we'll read them live on our Twitch, and our YouTube. So, without further ado, Demand, give us a little more detail in some of it's more personal, in a more personal sort of story, in a way.
So I'm gonna read off what's the difference between coincidence, synchronicities, and serendipities, right?
Right.
And so,
right.
Let me pull this to my main monitor. And I do have a few stories for you. One or two.
I'm excited, dude. Well, we haven't even discussed serendipity. Do you have a definition, or you want me to pull that up right fast? Because I have.
You have one? Hit me with it, brother.
I've got it. So a serendipity is an occurrence or development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way, right? Like sort of saving you in the nick of time, right? Mm-hmm. Like you run out of paper at a printer in the office, and you turn around to rush and go get more in a terrifying haze of upset excitement, and someone is standing behind you with the paper you need. Like that's a serendipitous event, right? Right. Extremely interesting movie also, by the way, of the same name. So like that's sort of, in the same vein of what we're talking about here when it comes to coincidences. Kiwi says the shipwreck sounds so much like Queen of Sinking Ships Violet Jessup survived the sinking of both the RMS Titanic and her sister ship, the HMHS Britannic or Britannica, and a third one too, but I forget which one it was. The RMS Olympic. So she survived three ship sinkings somehow. Like, yeah, it's like I would say that that is a good example of a serendipitous event that you were able to survive through happenstance and chance. The sinking of three ships. You would think you'd be done with ships after the first one, especially on the Titanic.
Right.
That was not a happy ending for the overwhelming majority of everyone.
Which is Titanic too.
Dude, I'm pretty sure she quit working on ships after that. Yeah. After that, you gotta take a hit after your third ship sinks. But demand, yeah, go ahead and read what you've got on this particular subject.
So what I have is coincidences occur when similar things happen at the same time. Like when you make a new friend, discover they've got the same birthday and graduated from the same college. Now we move into synchronicities, which are more in-depth coincidences in my back. Because I believe
I do feel like they are more in depth.
Yeah, I believe it has some more paranormal pull to it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yes.
I'm going to read you off a little story, right? A little story.
I love stories. A little campfire story, little mini one right here. Let's hear it, dude. All right, what happened, man? What's going on?
So, this is called the Graveyard Coincidence. This person speaks from Georgia. I was taking some pictures at a graveyard for a class, and my friends there were modeling for me at a graveyard. All right. I asked one of my friends to try to fake cry while I adjust my camera. When I go to take her picture, I see she's doing a great job at crying. I take a couple of pictures before I realize that she's looking at this big family grave with the exact same names of her relatives. There was her dad's name, her mom's name, her sister's name, and her brother's name, exactly same name and the exact same last name.
On the grave.
On the gravestones, yes.
So were they dead? Like, is that the end of the story? Like,
No, her family lives in another state, and they are alive and well. But it just so happens
Holy
that
crap.
they were at some random graveyard where the person was taking pictures, wanted the person to fake cry, and it just so happens they were standing right next to a family of gravestones that marked out her dad's name, her mom's name, her sister's name, and her brother's name. Exact first name, exact last name.
That's just nah, dude. Like, yeah, Kiwi said, no, hell no. I'd be out of there. Yeah, I would flee for my life, dude. If I saw, especially because my real name's a little more unique, dude. If I saw all of our names together, like in a graveyard, like in front of the headstones, what are the odds of that, dude? That's exactly what I'm talking about, dude. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And there's a lot of historical examples of that. So let's just take turns, if you don't mind, man. Let's just read a couple of or a few of these synchronicities and see what people think. You've already got the one of Hugh Williams, right? Some people have tried to debunk that. Evidently, it was not the same guy. Obviously, unless he was some sort of it's a vampire. At the end, anyway, of the story, there was two people named that. I mean, obviously, that was a common name, but I mean, legitimately, you've got to admit that that's like a very, 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 very strange coincidence. Like you said, I feel like synchronicities almost have a paranormal aspect to them. Now, Carl Jung stopped short of that, although he was a believer in the paranormal. He was a avowed Christian, by the time he passed away. So
Mhm.
he did believe in the supernatural. He did believe in the paranormal to a certain degree, but in his professional life, he generally stopped short of making claims he couldn't prove. Obviously, when personal religion is concerned, you can make those jumps and leaps in belief, but when it's the sciences, you have to stick to something uh that you can prove. And so, but there are stories like in history that are provable. And I can give you one such instance
Mm.
going back to to the ocean, to shipwrecks. I guarantee they're not all this way. Ed- Edgar Allan Poe wrote a novel called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, a very macabre sort of story, published in 1838, which features a scene in which the crew of a ship stranded in the ocean and starving. Their main ship had sank. They were on I suppose, a lifeboat, and the realizing that they not all of them are going to probably make it, and to prolong their situation, they decide to draw straws to see which one of them will be sacrificed, basically, and cannibalized to feed the others' bellies. The loser in this narrative, in this story, that draws the short straw is a man by the name of Richard Parker.
Richard
A
Parker.
Richard Parker, yes, I believe he was a one of the exactly. I'm trying to think his position on the ship. But 46 years later, in 1884, this is real life now, not the story. A few crew members aboard the ship Mignonette escaped a deadly storm just before their boat sank. Stranded without food, the men decided to sacrifice a 17-year-old crew member after the boy attempted to drink salt water to quench his thirst. I'm sure he was panicking. They knew, that as a no-no on the ocean, like drinking salt water only
It looks so
hastens.
delicious and it's well seasoned.
Oh, I know, right? Right. We're not cooking pasta. However,
Bro, can you
unfortunately,
imagine cooking pot? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. And so after he did this, his health rapidly declined. Um, they evidently decided not to wait for him to pass away, um, knowing that his body might indeed become infected during the process of death as he wasted away. So they did, they stabbed him to death, devoured him, and consumed him. The boy's name, Richard Parker. So, an interesting, again, coincidence. I'm sorry. Some of these seem to be a little bit more than that. I mean, a famous author wrote about Richard Parker being devoured and eaten, and then he was in real life, many, many years later. I mean, same instance, same story, same scenario, same name. There's a lot of coincidences there to sort of
Yeah.
rectify, right? There's a whole lot of coincidences. Um, Demand, you can go ahead and read another one. Then let's talk about the other specific types of coincidences, or excuse me, synchronicities, serendipities that exist in scientific notification.
Okay. I got one for you. This is from a person named Minnie. The title reads
Many.
Ouija board prediction came true.
Nope, I'm out.
Nope.
I'm done. Go ahead, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Dr. Man Show. Like, we're out. I
Hold
don't
on,
mess
Doc.
with
Hold
Ouija
on,
boards.
Doc.
I'm sorry to. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This,
My
is,
bad.
this is just a story. We're not messing with any Ouija boards here at the Dr. Man Show.
Okay.
Sit
All
tight,
right.
brother. Sit tight.
My skin is crawling, dude.
Minnie writes, my grandpa has always been the type of guy to love science fiction and the paranormal. One time he told me a story that has always freaked me out. Years ago, when my mother and her sisters were little, Grandpa had a Ouija board that he liked to mess around with down in their basement. One day, he asked the Ouija board questions about himself that the board could answer. For example, where am I from? What's my address? Who is my mother? Just to see what he would say. He asked, how many daughters do I have? And it responded back with 3. My grandpa said, I have 4 daughters. And the board responded back with, not for long.
Hell no, dude.
2 weeks later,
Hell.
one of his daughters died in a car accident.
Nah.
Woo.
Nah, dude.
Woo.
No, bro. No, dude. That's like a haunting, bro. Like, that's not even like a synchronicity, dude. This is horrible, man. But again, like, how do you link these causal things? Because like you can't draw a line to a Ouija board telling you your daughter's gonna die, and then like it happens. You can't be like, the Ouija board told me. It doesn't work. So how do you explain this? Eternity, what does eternity say? That's why we don't fuck with powers unknown. That's exactly
Yep.
right. That's literally why you don't know. And so if you think about specific kinds of synchronicities, there are ones that are noted, right? And I can go through that list right now. One of the first ones people will speak of is numerology, right? And numerology is sort of the divine or mystical connection between numbers and the natural world. And I know I've experienced this to a certain degree. I don't know if anyone else has, but I know it's a very, very consistent thing. It's the idea that seeing a sequence of numbers again and again and again in your life is sort of like the universe, God, angels, whatever, trying to tell you or send you some sort of message, right? And that may sound freaky until you'll hear my example, such as constantly seeing the time 11:11 on the clock, or 2:22, or 3:33, again in a repeating sequence, and then not even randomly while like checking the clock, right? Like it will be something that happens to you, like you'll wake up at this specific time, turn and see the number, right? You'll be at work, and those numbers will appear at work on maybe a receipt, or you'll be driving down the road and you'll see those same sequence of numbers on a license plate, right? It comes to the point where it happens so often that people started to be freaked out by it, right? And it wasn't just these repeating sequence of numbers. There's lots of different versions. It's given to a whole paranormal style of, belief that these numbers are angelic or they're warnings and they mean something. We could actually have a whole podcast about it. Let us know in the comment section, or if you guys want us to talk about numerology, because evidently there's all different kinds of numbers that mean different things that people have tried to go and figure out exactly what they mean. But in the instance, you have to admit, this happened to me. I remember there was a time in my life that I would see 333 all the time.
Really?
Like in college, yeah, it happened to me. It started one day. I remember I went to bed. I hadn't been sleeping well as usual for me, and I woke up and I saw 333. Like it was 3:33 in the morning, and I was just like, "That's weird." Like I woke up, right? Didn't think about it. Like went to bed, and I was driving to college because I was still like driving to school, right? And I remember on a license plate, they had 333 in the first sequence of numbers. And that's when I was like 333, like even out loud. I was by myself. I'm like, what the hell, right? Like there was three threes like in the number. And this is the weirdest part. This is the weirdest part. When I was at college the same day, and I would get, man, I was a fat ass, bro. We had a
I still have
Subway,
that.
bro, dude. We had a Subway in our college, dude. And I would go there with my friends all the time. And so me and my friend, we decided we wanted to get some food. And bro, I was a meatball sub addict.
The same, bro. Those things are slap.
They slapped so hard, bro. They slapped so hard. And so I got my sub, and I realized I was like, dude, I was hanging out, but again, like I was a fat kid. I was like, dude, I want dessert, right? And I remember I ended up getting like cookies. I went back and got like I'm sorry, oatmeal raisin cookies from Subway are like were my favorite back
Top
in the
tier.
day. Like they were so good. Yeah, I would get those, and I got like a coffee and something else for my friend. And I come back and I like throw down the cookies and like we're drinking our drinks or whatever extra, having our dessert because we've already eaten and we're laughing and cutting out. And I look down on their receipt. The total was $3.33.
What?
Whatever I ordered, can't give you the exact numbers. It was $3.33. And I remember I froze. And she was like, "What?" She was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, it's just really weird. I was like, I've been seeing this number sequence all day, every single day. Like, excuse me, all day today. And she's like, what sequence of numbers? And I was like, 333. And she's like, well, what do you think that means? And I was like, I have no clue. Like, I don't know. And to this day, I don't know if it was some sequence or some sort of warning
Like a
or what
matrix.
it was. A matrix kind of thing. Well, that's the thing, right? Like we're gonna go over that, here soon, about what we think these synchronicities might mean and what they are, maybe. And that's we're gonna end with that. But the other one of the other synchronicities is thought projection
Hold
or
on one
thought
second, Doc.
projection coincidences. Yeah.
I actually have something to back up your story about the number sequences. Believe it or not.
Okay. Let's hear what you got. Yeah, I'm listening, dude.
So, one week, Jay is our main protagonist in this story. Traveled to Jacksonville, Florida, my neck of the woods, a city of around 1.64 million people. A lot of people, Doc.
That's a lot.
A lot of
Millions.
Upon arriving, he checked into his hotel room, which was numbered 314, 314. The next day, he drove his rental car about 75 miles down the highway to his appointments in Valdosta, Georgia. He checked into his hotel room and was surprised to find yet again he'd gotten the same room number, 314. The next morning, he drove back down to Jacksonville, and this time he checked into a hotel near the airport since he was flying back to Memphis the following day. Can you guess what hotel room number he was staying at, Doc?
He was coming back to my neck of the woods, so I'm gonna be guessing it was 314.
314. Yeah. And then Jay went to the front desk and asked the clerk, the strange coincidence. There was a man standing behind him, says, if you think that was a coincidence, I was standing right behind you when you checked into the hotel at Vadosta.
What? And the same dude was there?
The same dude was there, yet checking into another hotel. So he went to Jacksonville, Florida, a random hotel, to Valdosta, Georgia. Then from Valdosta,
Random
Georgia,
hotel.
he went back to a airport hotel, and the guy that was standing behind him at Valdosta, Georgia, was the same guy that was standing behind him at the airport the airport hotel.
And on a side note, the number itself, 314, well, those are the first three numbers in pi. Which is obviously a rational number. Which is obviously, which obviously means it's not equal to the ratio of any two whole numbers and the digits do not repeat, right?
Correct.
Like, that is fascinating, dude. That is absolutely fascinating. Like, I don't know. What does it mean? And obviously human beings, we struggle to try to find meaning in these types of events because how could this be a coincidence, right? And I suppose it could be. But as Carl Jung stated in one of his interviews, like you start to get to the point where these start to belie mathematical coincidences, right? You're willing to admit, as I am, I know, Demand, there's just certain things that are coincidental. But after a certain amount of time, you start to defeat the mathematical probability that
Correct.
these things
Almost
are just
paranormal.
it becomes almost paranormal, and I honestly believe we can sense that. I
Yes.
really do. But one or two things will shrug off. As things continue to happen, as coincidences continue to pile and mount up, it starts to become we start to become aware of it in a
Hmm.
way that potentially we weren't paying attention before. One of the other specific examples of synchronicity is thought projection
Hmm.
um, coincidences. Basically, an event where you think about a friend or and then maybe receive an email or a phone call from them the moment you're thinking about them, right? Having a conversation about specific events or topics just before encountering the exact same scenario or information elsewhere, right? Like having a conversation with somebody saying, you know what, demand, the weirdest thing happened to me the other day, and it involved this guy and this person in this event, and then leaving that scenario and then seeing those people and a similar event occurring, right?
Right.
Or, the thought of, man, I really needed to, and this happens a lot of times with people in their work offices that don't always see the sort of the same people. They'll say something to the effect of, man, I really, really need to talk to such and such, like right now. And then they'll come around the corner. And what do they always say? Well, this is a serendipitous event. This is a coincidence. But like that's a pretty unique thing that someone you need to talk to or that you desperately need to interact with sort of almost in a way miraculously appears right at that moment. And I think a lot of us have experienced uh those events
Hmm.
like in our lives. And I feel like the longer you live, the more this becomes sort of something that often occurs. I know my family has a joke. My father would always talk about when we would drive to Cherokee and places of the like. He would tell stories as we were on our way up, like to the to where to meet our family, right? And I remember, and this has happened multiple times to the point that it's become a meme in my family, right? My dad would be speaking about somebody and he would be talking about them, and we would literally turn and he would see that we would see them on the corner. And my father would say, matter of fact, there's the guy I'm talking about right there. And he would be standing in front of us. Wait, we're
What?
effing, or I am.
I'm not effing at all.
Okay. Just going to reload.
We are not effing. I have zero dropped frames. Connection is steady.
Every version of everything froze on my screen. I'm having to restart
YouTube
it.
down?
Okay.
Question mark. It doesn't show down for me. I have not dropped a single frame.
What's up, Eternal? Yeah, who else? Anyone effing? Anyone effing? It's back. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Not
looking.
you.
I'm
Maybe
green
just
across the board.
I swear to God, this story is cursed. We're gonna keep moving. Yeah. So there's that, and we can
Which
cut
is
that
not
part out. So
frozen for
there's that.
me.
Okay, good, good, good. I reloaded. We're fine. We're fine. So, anyways, my dad would tell the story, and and it happened multiple times. My dad would say, anyways, there's this other guy. It was another trip, right? That I knew. He used to be like my old like school professor, this and that. And then my dad would be like, he would turn as we were driving, and be like, matter of fact, there he goes right there. That's him. And he was like crossing the street. It was old man. Obviously, my father was an older man at this point in time. And I remember my sister and my brother and I were like, how are these people appearing as he's speaking about them? Like it
Your
was
father's a
such a
shaman.
strange coincidence, dude. Yeah, my dad's like, yeah, we used to laugh at it. And like my even now to this very day, my sister and my brother and I will still laugh because if my father speaks about somebody, like they will randomly appear almost as if serendipitously as an example. Like it's the craziest thing like ever. One of the other synchronicities that can be sort of tracked is symbolic encounters. Now, I don't have a lot on this one. Basically, seeing a specific animal, a symbol, or an image, not necessarily a number, repeated at that seems to relate to a current situation in your life. And you know what? Correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't have any basis for this to say this. Maybe people that believe in such things can explain it to me. I honestly believe this is where astrology came from.
Oh.
I actually, this is my conspiracy theory, right? Like I'm ignorant about astrology. I believe that. I believe that serendipitous synchronic events happened in people's lives, and through symbology and through the sort of repetition of things, people began to draw lines where maybe they were or they weren't, trying to connect the dots into some sort of paranormal, astrological levels of coincidence. And you got to admit, I mean, I don't necessarily am a believer in astrology, obviously,
Right.
right? I tend to attempt to be, for the most part. I have my beliefs, but I attempt to be very, very skeptical of supernatural things. However, if you read astrological things, sometimes, on occasion, they tend to be creepily, eerily correct. If I'm being completely honest, there's times when I'm like, man, these are dead on. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a sheer coincidence, but I'm saying that if you get into it enough and you read fortunes and things of that, and I do on random occasions, I have friends that believe, and they'll send them to me because I'm a Sagittarius. They'll say, "Hey, look at Sagittarius today." I just want to say some of the ones have been so creepily accurate that it almost, sort of gives me pause. Yeah, yeah, go right ahead. Yeah, look yours up right now. Tell me what your astrological fortune is, and see if it relates to. And again, it isn't always as accurate, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like at the astrology has sort of a synchronistic effect. Go ahead, man.
Mine says
All
your
right.
planetary alignment is favorable. You will not burn any
Okay.
rice today.
Okay.
No,
That's weird.
says you're in the process of reaping the benefits. Gemini. It was only a
Okay.
matter of becoming aware of and settling certain matters related to your need for social recognition. Don't be so hungry for approval, Gemini. Everybody contains a stern inner parent and can survive comfortably in total self sufficiency. In fact, it's your greatest strength.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Now here's the problem with that. Like, I know what's happening in Demand's life. Demand knows what's happening in his life. You could sort of force feed that and into, you know, his life where necessarily maybe where it doesn't belong. And that's the question, right? How much of this is suggestion, and how much of it maybe is sort of serendipitous and synchronic. I've read fortunes personally that were so accurate, like they specifically mentioned actual events that would happen to me that did
Oh,
it were that were in, yeah, like they were that accurate, right? It may be like, okay, other times I get my fortunes that are sort of similar to the one you just read, that maybe you could kind of like slide it in. Do you have it up? Can you read mine?
I can read yours. Your a little saggy.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. I'm a Sagittarius.
A little
Yes, I'm a
saggy.
saggy. I'm a saggy. Oh, I can't wait for this, dude. We should start out the stream with this.
February
All right.
28th, 2025. You might want to check your alarm clock to be sure it really woke you up this morning. Your tendency today will be to stay in the cocoon of your own little dream world, deep in your own thoughts. Obsessive thoughts, in particular, will try and drown out some more pressing issues from the past that need resolution once and for all. Ring, it's time to wake up.
That's about enough of that one. That's about enough of that one. Just gonna go ahead and move on. What are the fourth type of?
Hold on, is that hold credence at all in in today's day? Come on, you can't just
I
blow
mean,
past it.
dude, my alarm went off and I didn't hear it today. Yeah, I didn't hear it. My wife had to actually come and like wake me up, and she did. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know about any of the other stuff. That legitimately happened. That legitimately happened. So That's my conspiracy theory. Feel
That's
free to correct me
crazy.
if that's my point. It's like sometimes things happen that you make you wonder, that give you pause, right?
Mhm.
Um, One of the other synchronistic things that can happen are dream synchronicities. Having vivid dreams about an event that later happened in real life, sometimes with very, very striking details. I know this has happened to me before. Like I don't know if it's happened to you, Demand. Have you ever dreamt something that came true, that became, something that seemed like a dream, but in the end was reality?
Um,
Anyone in chat too. We'll read
I
those
mean, some
out
of the
if you
dreams I
ever had
wish
it.
were reality.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
none of the Jennifer Aniston dreams. Thank you very much. I'm talking about something that seemed to be a natural occurrence in your dream, and then it became reality in real life. I've had that happen to me as well, like in the past. That something that seemed like so realistic, and then almost like word for word, conversation wise, and I almost didn't remember that it happened to the point that it sort of felt like deja vu, right? Like it sort of came up on me in a strange way that I was like, wait a minute, where have I heard this before? And then I realized, oh, I had actually dreamt this, a day or two before or whatever it was. So those sequences can happen. Eternal says I got my first sleep paralysis ever a couple months
It's
ago.
terrifying.
No way, dude. I'd love, yeah. If you want to tell that story, dude, we'll read it, man. Like legitimately, just type it out. Like we'll 100% read it. And even sequences and things like that, people will find synchronicities and things like sleep paralysis because they will view these events as warnings, almost portents, right? That these creatures or whatever they seem to be that visit, are sort of trying to warn you in a lot in a way that and obviously all of this generally defies logic. You end up in a point in time where you're just like, well, this can't be real, which brings me to another one of my stories. And this story is known as the miraculous exploding church incident. So, in Nebraska, the town of Beatrice on March the 1st, 1950, a church exploded around 7:25 p.m. as choir practice was always and did always begin at 7:20 p.m. All 15 choir members should have been in attendance as the church was immolated nearly instantaneously. The case of the matter is that isn't what happened. Not a single member of the church choir was injured or killed in the blast. How? All 15 members were running late for their own interpersonal reasons. They were nowhere near the church when it exploded. What could have been an utter and complete tragedy for Beatrice, Nebraska, ended up being relatively fine, save for the loss of the town church. So there you have it again. All 15 members of the church choir running late for their own strange, unique, and interpersonal ways
They were all
and
dogs.
reasons. I mean, all their alarms didn't go off, much like mine. So maybe running late isn't so bad. The next time y'all are freaking out, it could be a synchronicity saving your life, a sheer coincidence, perhaps. Eternal says it was a pretty short incident. I had an old man like figure that legit opened the door of my bedroom. He walked toward me, and suddenly the dude just vanished. I was trying to move or scream, but I couldn't move or make a sound. When it stopped, I panicked. Asked my girlfriend if she heard me scream. She told me no. And that's the end of the story.
Did the old man have a hat?
Was it the Hat Man? And have you ever heard of the sleep paralysis monsters or demons? There's quite a few. Not to try to, upset you further, but there are a few. Was he wearing a hat? I'm interested to know that,
Yeah, I'm
right?
very curious because I've been to the Shadow Realm a few
Yeah.
times when I took Benadryl, and let me tell you, the Hat Man makes frequent rounds in the Spider Realm.
You could stop that right now.
Eh,
Eternity
we
says
play dominoes on the weekends.
Eternity says it could make a non-believer think twice. That's a crazy story. Yeah, it's all of these stories sort of make you, it gives pause, right? It just sort of makes you just think like, I mean, that's almost too much. That's almost too much to believe, right? Like you could take the another historical event, the Lincoln and Kennedy assassinations, right? If y'all, everyone has almost heard all of these, right? Surely you have. The sort of strange coincidences between the Abraham Lincoln and Kennedy assassinations. Both presidents obviously shot in the head on Friday before a major holiday, while seated beside their wives, neither of whom were injured in the incident. Both were in the presence of another couple, and each in each case, that man was also wounded by the assassin. After both assassinations, there were loud and insistent claims that the fatal shot came from a different direction. Both were succeeded by vice presidents named Johnson. Andrew was born in 1808, and Lyndon was born in 1908, both of whom had 13 letters in their names and two daughters. Both assassins have 15 letters in their names. Booth shot Lincoln in the theater and fled to a warehouse. Oswald shot Kennedy from a warehouse and then fled to the theater. Both assassins were in their turn assassinated by other shooters who both used Colt revolvers and fired only one single fatal shot. I mean,
Oh, Doc. I have a story from Anonymous.
you got another personal story. I'm listening, dude.
Yeah,
What
this
what
is-
else we
this
got?
This is a story someone sent me in Discord. I don't know if that person wishes to be anonymous or not, but I'm gonna assume that they want. So that's what they messaged me. They said, "My great grandmother saw her late husband and told her they'd be together again soon. 2 days before, she was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer."
Wow.
Also, the man had a hat. Let's go, man. Tell him the man
Eternal
says hi.
Because I think he kind of not much of I'm not much of a believer. I think he had a hat and white hairs, reaching near his mouth, loose hair. So you see, this is the strange thing. This reminds me of, have y'all ever heard? And I'm gonna digress ever so slightly. When people are on psilocybin shrooms, right?
Okay.
MDMA, other kinds of psychedelics, drugs that affect the brain chemistry. Oftentimes, they'll go to a place that is eerily similar to every other place. You know, they will go to an area, they will see the same types of creatures, the same
Yeah.
feelings, the same messages, even. Like these creatures will often speak to them, give them messages. They'll have the same vibe to the point where it honestly makes you wonder, is this a real place? Right? And I get the same vibe from people that talk about sleep paralysis demons. You know what I mean? Like, why is it always eerily similar? Right? One of the most popular sleep paralysis demons is called the Old Hag. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of her. We've talked about this numerous times on Campfire
It's in
Stories.
your chest.
But it's an old, yeah, it's like an old witch who's like very, very small, and she typically crawls up onto the bed and then she'll sit on your chest. You have the sensation of not being able to breathe. Sometimes she will choke. Choke you. She has a malicious sort of intent and vibe, and obviously when you come out of sleep paralysis, she's gone. And there's a lot of, like, physical mental explanations as to why you feel that way. Some people say that when you stop breathing, when you start having these sleep paralysis episodes, and it's you feeling as if you're choked. The question is, why does so many people see an old hag? Why do people see the hat man? Why is he always old? Why is he wearing a hat? Why sometimes does his eyes glow? Other times he's just simply a shadow, right? Like
Shadow
that's
people exist,
strange to
Doc.
me. I'm not saying one way or the
Bro.
other.
So,
So he made me think about a German from the Hunter Bloodthorn. I'm pulling that up now. Demand if you can do that too.
um,
Germ. I'll send it to you.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
We'll
What did
do
you?
it live.
What were you gonna say? Yeah,
Uh,
we're gonna do it live.
So, as a person who has consumed such things as delicious, yummy B plus pluses and Cambonians and things like that, those are all
Hmm.
shroom variants. Very legal in Florida if you have up to 5 pounds of wet agriculture rules. And so, it was with Chef A, Chef B, Chef C, right? I'm not gonna give out their names because
Sure. Understood.
and we all had shared experiences within the same realm, if that makes sense. Like there would be times when all of us would see the same thing. But there'd be also times when we would each have separate existences outside of that, right?
Right.
And so Chef A and I were hanging out back in his garage, and we were looking at Chef B, and Chef B was just wailing into a trash can, just full everything he's ever eaten is into the trash can. And Chef
Chucking
A,
it all.
yeah, and just chucking it all. Chef A and I were like, "That's weird. Let's go inside where the AC is." So we went inside, but later on we find out that Chef B was fighting back demons that were trying to get out of the trash can.
What?
And then all four of us saw a hovering red light that looked just like a helicopter, but it made no noise, no engines, no nothing. And it just hovered. And it was like maybe 10 feet away from the ground from us looking up at it. It had multiple red lights, and it looked kind of like a weird helicopter. And we all of us saw,
drone?
yeah, like a drone, but like gigantic. It was very close, and we all had this exact vision, the exact same understanding. All of our descriptions were linked up, right? So I believe that we all shared. When you're on mind-altering substances, you
Yeah.
have the potential.
Yeah.
That's just like the theory of when women get periods in workplaces, their systems sync up.
Yeah. Yeah. They link up like biologically, right? Which is very little understood, but still something that is a noticeable effect that does happen. I mean, that's fascinating. Like I sent you the picture of potentially what Eternal Sorcerer may have seen.
Have it pulled up.
Was this him? Eternal? Honestly,
Spooky.
that's not my bag right there. But more hairier and wider, like a
Or
zombie.
like a
dude.
Yeti.
I mean, that sounds so terrible, man. If I saw that, I'd been screaming too,
I would
dude.
have been like, cousin.
Yeah. The gray man is come for demand. Hell no. Yeah, this is Black Rose. Yeah.
Let me go ahead and check my rice because it's. I forgot I left the oven on.
Yeah, take a break. We'll cut this We'll cut this out. Go ahead.
And then we will finish this up with the story of how you and I met, so it can be on a record.
Yeah, we need this on record. I need to tell it good, and then we'll talk about what synchronicities, what are the solutions, what's happening, and we'll wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to the next segment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Campfire Stories. This particular segment of the Dr. Man Show has its own channel. We had to separate it out from our hilarious quality video game content, and I can get you that. I can get you that link right now. If you just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Just kidding. Kiwi already has it. There it is. That is Campfire Stories. You can subscribe to that channel for more content like this. We got shorts. We got all kinds of creepy podcast style content. More coming soon. We took like a month or so off, and then we tried to come back with this particular story. And the man was having internet problems, so we thought this one might actually be cursed. But it's going up. We have enough content now, even if it crashes, that we're just going to put it up in its raw form because we're tired of it. Evidently, this subject the universe didn't want us to talk about. Maybe it's just too personal for the universe. Maybe this particular story just hits different. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So this was a fun one to do. We're gonna have more. If you guys have other creepy things, you can join the Campfire Stories channel in our Discord. We can also provide you with a link for that. But typically, we all of the information that we harvest before campfires goes on there. So if you want the spoilers, if you want to be educated on the subject before we do these every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can do that. Join the Discord and select the hashtag Campfire Stories channel, and you can be privy to all of the paranormal deliciousness that we talk about every single week. If it's strange, if it's weird, if it is miraculous, and even if it's just downright creepy, we talk about it. So submit your personal stories, subjects, and all the information there, and we'll be happy to give a discussion on that. Give it the attention it deserves, because the world is a complicated and strange place. More complicated and strange than I think a lot of people would like to believe. So, with that being said, we're going to finish up here in a minute. I've got one more story before Demand wants me to tell our personal synchronicity, and it's how the Dr. Man Show was created. That is correct. We were created in and around a synchronicity. Before that, let me give you the synchronicity or the story of Tamerlane. Has anyone ever heard of the military leader Timur or Tamerlane? Timur, also known as Tamerlane, was a Turco-Mongol conqueror who founded the Timurid Empire in and around modern-day Afghanistan, Iran, and Central Asia, becoming the first ruler of the Timurid dynasty. An undefeated commander, he is widely regarded as one of the greatest military leaders and tacticians of all modern history, as well as one of the most brutal and deadly. Timur is also considered a great patron of art and architecture, or he interacted with intellectuals, and the list is very long of those people. But as the story goes, on his grave, there was a warning. And the warning reads as follows. When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble, and whomsoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I. 2 days later, in 1941, the body was exhumed by a Soviet scientist. Despite having the German-Soviet non-aggression pact, Adolf Hitler and his Nazi troops invaded the Soviet Union. I'm sure just a coincidence. Not a curse. Not a synchronicity. Just a
quinky dink.
Just a quinky dink. Right? Just a Just a coinky-dink. Might want to leave cursed tombs alone. That's all I'm saying. I don't say much, Demand. Just might want to leave the cursed tombs alone, dude. We don't need Hitlers. We don't
Return
need
the
Stalins.
slab.
The man in rags. The man in rags.
Bang Ramsey.
So, the actual record of Demand and I and our meeting. In our synchronistic meeting. So, Demand and I actually met in a League of Legends game. A very terrible game for myself.
Mm-hmm.
A brutal battle, one might have said, that ended with much raucous trash talking. One gentleman on the opposite team, not only as Demand, selected another person from the other team to verbally assault, as is the way of League of Legends players. That man was a man named Doc X 33. Yours truly. We had a raucous back and forth. Words were said, trash was talked, laughter was actually had. And despite our harsh words and criticisms for each other's gameplay, we actually friend invited each other and became friends. Now, at this point in time, I was on dialysis. I was mostly unemployed, but I was instructing martial arts and sort of doing my own thing, right? I had my friend started a martial arts studio, and I had trained with him many, many years in the past, and we decided he wanted my help, like basically managing, running the thing, teaching as much as I could in the capacity that I could, right? Demand, full-time chef, doing his chef thing, doing the thing that he did the best at that time. And so we would play games off and on, back and forth, until we realized, we actually had a lot more in common than we originally believed. We linked up in Ventrilo back in the day, got in voice chat, talked to each other, and we actually became.
Factory.
Yeah. Despite the fact that our lives were going in separate directions, yeah, the Law Factory was what the channel was named. That was Mord Dill's idea. Shout out Mord. We became friends, like really good friends, and we laughed and we cut up. We played League of Legends together, other games, or we would just sit and chill and kind of talk and hang out. And since that day, actually, nothing much has changed. And around this time, we both decided, you know what? We were streamers before. He dabbled in it. I dabbled in it. Like, why don't we give it a shot together? Yeah, I love streaming. He loved it, but it's just like, it's so boring to stream alone. You just don't, especially if you don't have any viewers. We know how that we know how that is. You just no one to bounce your ideas, your thoughts of. What are you supposed to do? Just keep rambling into the ether like by yourself? Most people don't even try. They just like AFK and just play games. It's so boring to watch. But we knew Demand and I could bounce off each other. That was our strength. So it's like, dude, why don't we start a stream together? Why don't we, like, let's do this thing together. Yeah, two handsome men. Thank you, Blackwall Rose. Yeah. Like, we decided, let's do this, in a joint effort. And it was around the same time that we would just start to get to know each other a little bit better, And I remember Demand was the first one. He was just like, dude, so what do you do, guy? And I was like, well, I've been sick. I've had kidney failure, and I believe at this time I'd had my transplant. So I was recovering from that, and I was being more active in martial arts, really helping my friend, train his students, teaching them the Filipino martial arts. And I was like, well, I'm sort of between jobs right now, but this is before I became a voiceover artist. And I was like, I'm sort of just doing my thing, and I help my friend. I run a martial arts studio with my friend. I, help him with the day-to-day activities. Sometimes I teach. Lots of times I teach. And he was like, that's like really fascinating. I'm like, well, what do you do? He's like, well, I'm a full-time chef. I'm like, that's absolutely crazy, dude. He was like, yeah, man, I teach, can I say that? Can I say where you
Yeah.
worked? Yeah. So he was like, I work in Universal Studios in over there towards Disney World. Because obviously he's from Orlando and I'm from Tennessee. I was like, that's absolutely crazy. I said, I know a guy I said, I know a guy that actually lives in that way that actually worked over there. I said, I'm not sure if he was a chef or not. I said, but he was actually one of my martial arts instructors. I was like, he was this badass guy, Filipino guy, martial arts instructor, bad to the bone. And I was like, he's one of my, main instructors in the art that we teach, right? He's driven, all of our art that we now teach here in Tennessee, to the next level. And Demand sort of froze. He was like, that's really strange because I actually know a Filipino guy, and he was actually one of the guys that trained me. And was it Garmanger? Like, what was the
Garmager.
specific? Yeah,
So
Garmanger. Which
when I was so a little backstory, right? When I was a busboy, I really wanted to learn how to cook and how to do things because I thought it was really awesome that it's like art almost. And so I asked Chef, we're gonna say his name soon. And I asked Chef, like, hey, can I learn how to ice carve? And he just hands me a squeegee. And I'm like, all right. So I was still dressed up in my bus uniform, not getting paid, off the clock. I'm just squeegeeing this man's ice as he carves. Like this giant block of ice. And just chainsawing up. I'm just squeegeeing. I'm squeegeeing. Like, he didn't really talk too much to me, but I'm just, I'm squeegeeing. And I'm learning just by looking at him and by observing it. And a year passes. And he finally accepts it. I'm the only busboy. Everyone else is like sous chefs, first cooks and all that, like, pretty high up there. And I'm the only busboy that's in his class that's learning garmager. And garmager is taking a paring knife and using the scraps of like fruit and vegetables and things like that to create beautiful objects, oftentimes flowers or roses or like even like a shoe, or eventually you get to, like, you can make like a little boy with like a little like a Pinocchio type beat with like shoes made of like the clogs of like a potato skin and all that. It's really interesting, really cool. But yeah, I was the only busboy there that actually taught me because I put in so many hours of my own free time to squeegee ice.
to learn, right?
Yeah, to learn.
And so Demand and I obviously start to realize like what's happening here, and I was like, okay, there's no way this is the same guy. There's just no way that we actually have the same master. This guy actually taught me the horse whip. The same man could cut slices of paper, into while you're holding it like this, like with laser like precision. Just an exceptionally talented man. And the man was like, well, dude, like, what's your master's name? And I was like, his name is Rafi Pambuin. And the conversation just froze for it seemed like an eternity, but I know it was only mere seconds before the man was like, "No way, no way!" He's like screaming at the top of his lungs. It's the same exact guy.
Lost Chef Rafi.
He lost it. Yeah, Chef Rafi was the same man that taught me a lot of the skills that I learned. At the same time, he was teaching Demand the same skills that he learned. Two different arts, two different disciplines. We knew the same man, and we were just two smack talking losers playing League of Legends. But our like talk about the 7 points of Kevin Bacon. Our lives were inexorably changed by one man who taught us both completely different skills, and it was just that. It was the moment where I was just like, how are we connected in that kind of way, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, that is our own personal synchronistic story here. That was a synchronicity that joined us together in a way that there's no cause or effect here. That there's no reason that could have happened. How is that we came to know each other in a strange and intimate way, sort of before we ever really knew each other.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm glad we finally recorded the story, because I mean, that story it's true. It's 100% true. And it's so strange that we could have met the way we did and yet been so closely related, separated by like 1 degree. Like 1 degree. At any given time, I could have gone to see where Chef Rafi worked, because I mean, he invited us to come down multiple times. And we never did, to that area. To meet him and just hang out with him, and I could have met Demand. He could have, he inquired more about Rafi's art. Like, he could have learned and gone with him to any of the seminars that we were at.
It could have seminars.
Oh, he holds a ton, dude. Like, he teaches his family martial art, which is what we learned. It's called Pambuan Arnis, if you guys want to look it up. You could do that. This story is 100% legit for those of you who cast dispersion or doubt upon it. But it's just something really unique, and I feel like that it's strange how closely a lot of us are related and how, sort of our lives sort of sync up in ways we possibly can't imagine, which brings me to the final point here that we're going to talk about. How
Oh,
how is this a thing, right? um what constitutes a synchronistic event is obviously subjective. We've talked about a lot here. Some of those you may disagree with, right? Some of
right.
the stories we told, you may not think that they're synchronistic. Perhaps they're just, you know, sheer coincidences. The idea of a synchronistic event sort of depends heavily on personal meaning and interpretation. What one person sees as coincidence, someone else will see as potentially divine providence. Well, let's start off first about the psychological connection, explaining that. Carl Jung, who popularized the concept of synchronicity, believed in what he called a cosmic consciousness. The idea that human beings are connected to a higher power or some sort of universal consciousness. He believed that this connection could be achieved or enhanced through meditation, prayer, and even contemplation. Rationalism and superstition are sort of complementary in his interpretation. It is a psychological rule, he stated, and he was once quoted, that the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. In other words, the more rationalistic we are in our conscious minds, the more alive becomes the spectral world of the unconscious. So, in sort of a in a psychological manner, the things that we don't understand, the more that we sort of push them away, the more that we try to hold on to our sense of rationalism, our sense of fact versus fiction, and the more we try to delineate between the two, the stronger the subconscious can become, and the more prevalent those things can become. That's why you have a lot of people who are very scientific, very rational people that end up sort of believing in the supernatural towards the end of their life, because by that time, you can no longer deny the coincidences and turn a blind eye to see things that seemingly have some sort of order, some sort of message, some sort of ideal, or some sort of line tying us all together in a way, perhaps a consciousness, perhaps through a god, right? Which brings us to our second explanation. Did you want to comment on that one, Demand?
I do. So I'm a firm believer in that you cannot have order without a higher power.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is when you look at everything around you, right? You look at everything that has been created, the atoms, the elements, things like that. It, to me personally, it seems to me that someone with a higher level of intellect created these things, right?
Right.
Someone with an ordered mind, a controlled presence, a
Right.
higher being
Right.
created this. Because,
And that's go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, no, no. You,
That brings us to the that well, yeah, you can continue on because that actually brings us to the second explanation, right? There's a psychological order and a connection that sort of seems to tie us all together, perhaps in a some sort of universal consciousness, right? The
mhm.
second explanation is religious or a spiritual connection, which is sort of close to what you're hitting at if you want to continue to elaborate. And you could find that through people. I talked about numerology earlier. Some people think that there's angelic numbers. There's ways that a higher spiritual power, God, or perhaps entities far above us in another dimension or what have you, are speaking to us through these sort of synchronistic events, and that there is a message to be gained or gleaned from a lot of these, right? Which is why
Right.
people look for that symbology, right? And they look for meaning in numbers.
100%. I fully believe that with the because nothing in my opinion happens for is like a coincidence, right? There's
Yeah.
everything happens for a reason, and while
Right.
you yourself don't understand that reason, or it's not clear to you at that current moment in time, doesn't mean it's not without reason.
Right.
Because everything
Right.
around you has some sort of order with it. You'll be hard pressed to find something that's truly chaotic, something that's truly
Right.
spontaneous, or something that's truly a coincidence of sorts.
Which is a fascinating way to believe, but people have spent their entire lives trying to, whether it was through y- biblical or through other spiritual methods, to try to find the meaning in a lot of these synchronistic events. Some people believe that they have, right? That if you've seen certain numbers of sequences, that those mean something. Again, we could develop or devote a whole campfire story to that if you want. I
Mhm.
didn't. I had to stop going into it, man. I don't know how much you know about numerology,
Quite a bit
but
from
they
my old chef.
believe. Yeah, yeah. So you know far more than I do about it, because when I started to delve into it, I'm like, I can't do this. Like, it's so detailed, and the symbology, which
Angelic
is very
numbers and all that. Yeah.
angelic numbers, yes, exactly. That means, and what certain numbers mean. The same thing with symbology, sacred geometry, like that there is some sort of universal meaning in all of these coincidences that affect our lives, that actually tie and bind us together, as you said, through some sort of entity, some sort of spiritual power. Um, and I mean, there's only one other explanation that I could think of for this, and this is my own.
LSD.
I had to pull this one out. I mean, no, not LSD.
Callback.
But again, that's you're not far off, considering the fact that LSD and these mind-altering substances sort of remove you from what you would consider your conscious self. And I believe
It's
that's
called an
what a
ego
lot of
death.
Yes, a lot of people are thinking and believe that separating yourself, and this is what happens in death, that once you're separated from your body, your consciousness continues on and goes on forward, wherever forward is, right? Or maybe backward, or maybe outside of time and space. It's really hard to
Well,
figure out or delineate, right?
so
And I
Albert
mean,
Einstein had a theory
mhm,
that time is not as linear as one would think, right? So, well, we think in a linear timeline, right? But in
yeah,
reality, the past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously.
mm,
That was one of his theories. Is like, time isn't just a linear path. There's multiple
that
paths across all of time, and it all
it's just our
happens at the same time.
perception. But our perception is what we think like time to be is linear, right?
Correct. Because
That's it.
if you ever
Okay.
notice, right, you're at work, and the first 2 hours go by super fast,
Yeah.
right? And then the remaining
Yes.
5, 6, 7 hours are just painful. And
Awful.
then, yeah, it's horrible. So I believe that time is perception.
Right.
And you can make time go by or you can make time go slow or fast depending on what you're doing at the time. Now, you could say that that is just you're having fun in the moment, or you're hating something, so time feels like it's going by. But isn't
Right.
what you're feeling part of what you're perceiving?
I mean, I can't argue with that. It's got to be part of it. I know that there were experiments done on that, and I'm trying to
Hmm.
think. I don't know if I have them or if we spoke about them in another campfire stories, but there were experiments done with time, and it was a guy that or experiment where a scientist was trying to make time move slower and trying to find a way to extend time, and it was very similar to what you were talking about. With human perception. So I'll have to look that up and see if I can find out more
I have
about
something
it.
for
But
you, Doc. I have
okay,
one interesting law that China has. And some of you might not know it. Some of you might know.
okay, all
China
right. Lay it on
has
me.
a what?
I said, lay it on me.
All right. China has a law that you will be arrested if you are proven to be a time traveler. Time traveling is banned in China.
You're lying, dude.
I have. All right.
I hear clicking. Are you bringing it up? Are you are you
Yes.
are you pulling a Jamie on me live right now on the
Yep,
Dr.
yep.
Man show? No way, dude. There's no way. There's no way time travel is banned in China. I'm about to start.
In 2011,
Flow psychology. Thank you, Suji. Go ahead, man.
the State Administration of Radio, Film, and Television in China announced a ban involving time travel. So not only are you not allowed to time travel, you're not supposed to
Okay.
show time travel. You're not supposed to talk about time travel. You're not supposed to, in any media, any form of media, Chinese
Yeah.
government has banned time travel.
That is fascinating. Yeah, Suji brought it up. It's called flow psychology. Basically, the state of optimal human experience is characterized by intense focus, enjoyment, or a sense of effortless action. So I can't even go into that because even the Google AI explanation is very very difficult. We'll go into it again another time. Flow psychology, look it up. It's the your experience of time and the study of such, which is evidently probably banned in China, as we just found out.
Yep.
With this is my own sort of like, idea about what this could be. I couldn't find anything on it specifically. I'm sure that it's been explored by people far smarter than I. But what are synchronicities? To me, there's only one other option. Obviously, there's a psychological effect, a religious, spiritual connection. The last one, I'm sorry to say, Demand, it's just the Matrix, right? So, aka, yeah, this is you'll like this one, aka a simulation theory, right? That's right. That's right. I've drawn a squiggly line between synchronicities and simulation theory. Listen to my half-cocked belief, Demand. Are you ready?
Hold on, let me turn to the board.
Turn to the board, bring the strings up and the tacks. If we are indeed living in a simulation, Demand, then perhaps synchronicities are simply redundancies in the code that makes up our reality. So hear me out. For our non-programming nerds and friends, a redundancy refers to a section of code that is no longer used or is unnecessary, essentially repeating the same functionality or logic in multiple places, meaning that we are seeing connections or these redundancies in the code that are simply repeating patterns that are a breakdown in the code that makes up the fabric of our reality.
What happened to Indians?
That's not a synchronicity. Indians, are you talking about Native Americans?
No. Those are Native Americans. I'm talking about Indians.
What do you mean? What happened to them?
I feel their code broke down somewhere along the line.
All right, so the Indians didn't create the fabric of our reality. They are involved in it. I'm talking about whatever, whoever, however, the fabric of our reality was created. If indeed, because simulation theory is really popular.
Elon
It's
Musk
very,
believes
very,
it.
very. Yeah, Elon Musk believes it, right?
believes we're in a
And so
simulation.
what if these sort of synchronicities, these coincidences we're finding are simply just breakdowns in the code? They are the repeating numbers, the seemingly coincidental things that should have been separated by the simulation, our meeting. These things are accidentally sort of joined together by a degradation in the code as it rushes towards failure, ultimate failure. A corrupted file, if you will. That's my own half-cocked theory.
My only
Just
question:
saying.
You want to be Morpheus or Neo?
Dude, I'm Morpheus, dude. I'm literally like the old sage, man. That's
I'll be
me.
Neo.
Dude, also like Morpheus has the badass like flying knee, dude, where he lands down. Like you can be the hero. I don't want to be the hero, dude.
You have to.
I want
You
to be
have
the
the
believer,
shades that
man.
like sit on your face without like any connectors. That's pretty cool.
Dude. And the cool voice, dude. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I 100% want to be Morpheus. Yeah, that's me for
The
sure.
giant
For sure.
dong.
So while many people do report experiencing paranormal synchronicities, as the ones we've mentioned to you today, as the ones you've potentially experienced yourself, obviously there is no current scientific consensus on the explanation of the phenomenon, and we're unlikely to reach it, as if we're unlikely to find the solution is what I'm trying to say, being the fact that these things seem to occur outside of our control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like these things sort of happen again coincidentally, like almost seemingly, as if they're ordered by something or someone, or again a breakdown in the code. They seem to be out of our control because I can't just wish you here, right? I can't think about somebody and have you appear in front of me, and that's actually what Carl Jung's whole point was. The synchronicity
What am I
can't
just
be
knocking on your
connected
door
by
right now?
cause. Dude, yeah, then synchronicity, like we have superpowers at that point in time. Synchronicities like cease to exist. We have powers. But that's the thing. It's like we can't cause and affect these things a lot of times. They just sort of
Mhm.
seem to be happening outside of the bounds of our control and our reality. And that's where we're going to leave it. Man, you got a final word on any of this, dude?
Jesus Christ.